Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Mondays with Maishi. This is Maishi Norman out of Lakewood, New Jersey. It is July 14th. We are deep in the summer, deep in the rainstorms. We're having hurricane weather all over New York, New Jersey, tri-state area tonight, as it's been this summer. So what better thing can you actually do than sit in your office and watch Mondays with Maishi, especially one that features Dr. Binyamin Tepfer from the Five Towns, New York, who is a at least two-time, I think, previous presenter here on Mondays with Maishi, always with an intelligent thought and something to walk away with, something spectacular to walk away with. So, Binyamin, old childhood friend, thank you very much for joining us tonight and giving of your time once again.
You're very welcome. It is such an honor and privilege, and I'm super excited to be here, with you tonight, and to really go over the topic that we have planned for tonight.
Yes, and to share. And for those of you who are first timers here, please, we beg if you can turn on your videos. We love to see people. We love facial interaction, and it gives us feedback, and it makes it feel just more real and genuine and connected. So for those of you who can, we understand it's late. It's late at night for most of us. If you can't, we understand. But if you can, please turn on your video, show a face. Thank you, Shulam. Thank you, Shimi. Thank you, Shelly. And Mark, thanks in advance. Okay. Tonight's topic is a very different topic. It's something that speaks to me, I guess more on a profound, deep psychological, and I guess I could say Cabalistic level. It's the topic of masculinity, its pertinence to relationships, how it pertains to oneself, getting to know oneself, and really, Benjamin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it has many existential repercussions also. Like, how do I live as a male? And as a female, or for the spouse or partner, female partner of the masculine man, what does it mean? What does she need to know or apply or expect in looking at healthy masculinity and unhealthy masculinity, and how should she deal with that? So it's a really packed topic and something that's very, very different from what we've discussed in the past. So, Benjamin, if you could just like open up, give me a little heads up. I don't know if I understand what the term masculinity means. I think to many people it means different things. To some people it means aggression and toughness. To some people it means, I guess, nice and amicable, the giver or the provider. Talk a little bit about when we say masculinity, what are we referring to in real time?
Yeah, yeah. So first of all, what I'll say is that yeah, tonight's topic is going to, I think, touch on um, all of the above that you said in terms of number one, how each of us as men just carry ourselves, feel our existence in this world. Um, it goes into how we probably bring ourselves in relationships themselves, and then the people that we're in relationships with, our spouses, our wives, how it's going to land on them, how it's going to then allow them to then experience us in a relationship and then act back. So it really covers so many areas. It covers spirituality, like you said, it covers our role religiously, relationally. So I think that we'll understand it towards the end of tonight, how it touches on each of these things. Now, I think you asked, is there a definition of masculinity? Um, at the end, we'll have it defined, but I think it's going to take the full discussion tonight because there are going to be so many parts of it. There's masculinity in its healthy form, and then there's also masculinity in its very toxic, misused, misrepresented form. And I think that even at the outset, it's important to just put out there that see, the topic itself is controversial. It pushes buttons. What do you mean masculinity? It's like this patriarchal, dominant, old school view of who men are and what religion is and what religion says about relationships and what about women's rights, what about feminism, what about mutuality in relationships. I think we've come a long way from that, and I think that yeah, that's going to be something that needs to be clarified tonight because masculinity in its healthiest form is not anything that is threatening or scary or dominant or controlling over women. What you'll see tonight is the opposite. I was always afraid presenting on this topic, mixed audiences, men, women, and to my surprise, I want to say without exception or almost without exception, the women who have heard this topic discussed and have been part of these presentations, as much, if not more than the men, were so just interested, and not just interested, wanting for there to be healthy masculinity in their lives, from the men, from their fathers, from their spouses, siblings. So it's something that is not just there for men, but it's going to be something appreciated by both men and women. So masculinity, just to come back to your question, masculinity is going to be, what is the role? What are some of the character descriptions? What is some of the energy, us as men, that we are trying to tap into, to live, to develop, to nurture in our role as men? And there's something, I think there has to be this way. If you read most of the approaches of couples therapy, without naming them specifically, the techniques are obviously powerful and wonderful. Most aren't going to highlight or really put a heavy emphasis on differences between men and women. There's almost like a whitewashing of gender. And maybe it has to be for political reasons. Also, not every man is very masculine. There are a lot of exceptions, and there's the masculine in the feminine, there's the feminine in the masculine, there's all of that. But for many, there's also an importance and a power and something organic and healthy and, as we'll see tonight, natural about, just like there are biological differences, there are also energetic, emotional, relational differences that many people, not everyone, and it's not forced on anyone, but that many people, it relates to them, and they find it resonates when it's spoken about, and it's not forced on anyone, but suddenly the relationship starts to flow better because the man is playing that masculine role, and then the woman is therefore allowed and can and feels comfortable in the feminine role. And not that they're rigid, and not that they're very, very set on this responsibility. That's very superficial. I'm talking about a deeper way of being in the relationship, not who changes a diaper or who shops. That doesn't make a difference. Healthy people can pick up roles that need to be done. That's not the point. But what we'll get to is just deeper things of being in a relationship that end up making a huge difference for many people. So that's what we're going to try to uncover tonight.
Good. So you keep indicating that there is a concept or an idea of masculinity that is healthy. So what is masculinity then?
Yeah. So let's see what healthy masculinity is. We'll say it in a sort of a nutshell, and it has to be fleshed out. There's an inner worth to a healthy masculine role that isn't only or isn't exclusively or heavily feeding off of the validation or the worthiness of another person. Now, meaning there's a healthy self-worth. We didn't say anything specific yet about the man, but these are some of the underlying things that need to be there. There's also specific character traits that this healthy man brings to a relationship. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Number one, he sees himself as not just, we say, like, the giver, the mashpia, and the mekabel, but in some form of a selfless leadership role in this relationship. Now, I say the word leadership, it doesn't mean dominance, and it doesn't mean control, and it doesn't mean inflexibility, but that there's a certain initiation and a certain you know, strength that this masculine person steps up, because that's the role that the system, the woman, the family is relying upon and needs, that this man steps up and does. There's a certain appropriate assertiveness that needs to be there when things need to happen. And when this doesn't happen by the man, there's a vacuum, and then the feminine needs to step in. And then what happens is you'll have the man complaining, I have this overly assertive, overly critical, overly controlling wife, because there's a vacuum in that relational system where he doesn't step up and convey a kind, benevolent strength of presence in this family system. So the discipline ends up being shifted to her. Ideas where we need to go. He never has an opinion. There's a certain meek weakness that this man plays instead of a certain, again, presence and centeredness and strength. That, again, the strength is not about dominating anyone, but it's almost like there's a safety in the system because this person gives a sense that things are under control.
Like a protector, almost like a sort of protector and savior.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. So there's a protector element to this, that I'm not losing it right now. And I don't want to stereotype. There are men that are going to be more emotional, and women could be more logical. It's not about logical and emotional. We'll get to that. There needs to be a deep emotional attunement to masculinity as well. But there's sometimes in a situation an ability to stay calm and stay centered, and there can be a lot of storm around. But the masculine role is going to be, hey, we have this under control, and here's what we need to do. So it's not reactive only, and it's not just very in touch with just the emotion of that moment, but it's able to monitor the entire situation and keep things feeling like, hey, there's someone in charge here, not in charge that he's going to tell us all what we need to do.
Right.
Yes,
controlling,
yes.
But
right.
It sounds like what you're describing is where the system within that's within that male feels safe and protected and secure as a result of the male's presence.
Yeah, correct.
How do you know that that's called masculinity? Maybe that's femininity. Maybe that's a trait that females should.
Yeah, sure. And it could be, and there are elements of it that there are. We don't want to make it like this, like oversimplify and make it black and white, because everything is nuanced and everything is everything. But you see, I think if we want to first start with the world of psychology, one of the first people to talk and write about this was Jung, who was one of the students before he broke off from Freud, and in his archetypes of masculinity and femininity, what these archetypes try to uncover is, can we look at these universally described character traits that come up across cultures, across means of communication like poetry and literature and stories and art and religion and writings? There's these universal themes that describe the masculine and very different ones that describe the feminine. And so these character traits he was trying to uncover and write about were the ones that appeared to describe the men across cultures and across history. And so he tapped into different ones. I'll give you a couple of examples of
and he called these archetypes, if I'm not mistaken.
Archetypes, yes. And so a couple of them that have to do with masculinity, and I will give examples of them. Now, one is the king. Now, I don't want it to be misunderstood. This doesn't mean I'm the king and feeding grapes into his mouth as he sits there and gives orders. He was talking about some of the concept of what we were mentioning before. This selfless leader who's there to provide service to the people. That's a leader is a king is a selfless person, at least the ideal king. He notices the bigger picture of what's going on, and there's a firm kindness, there's generosity, but there's a firmness is a bunch of pieces that have to, all flow. So it can't just be, we give everything to one. It has to be, the big picture has to be seen. And there's a masculine trait, much more of rather than the details. There is a bigger picture piece that men often have, even way before this. If you want to go back to its roots in Torah, so this is Chachma is very different than Bina. These are the right and left, and these are masculine and feminine sides. So very, very different. So there's a big picture. We have to keep the whole system here in line. But if you have someone who
just explain that for a second?
Sure.
Chachma means is
Chachma is described as the initial big picture realization of something. It doesn't have the particulars, fleshed out yet, all the details. It's this flash of, hey, here's the bigger concept. It's seeing things before they're actually granularly worked out. Bina is, a different form of wisdom where it's, no, here, this and that have to be implemented. It's the implementation and the building of something with its details. It's much more of a feminine quality. Okay, so this bigger picture is what we're talking about here in terms of a masculine quality. It's doing and not needing or wanting or expecting appreciation. It's this character trait. But I'm not waiting right now to win, Husband of the Year award. There's something secure and selfless, but that's what I'm here for.
So so I was going to say, do you mean to say that the natural instinct of, let's say, an undamaged or a healthy male, the natural instinct would be, this is what I do. This is what male does. And me do this. Like a very, not complicated, but just it's instinctual.
Instinctual in a healthy man. And we all have to try to develop and tap into this, that this is a quality that we have, or that we have to try to heal if it's not there yet, and to work through. And obviously this can have its toxic form, which is a very insecure king or leader goes to, controlling, or goes to dominating. Why? You only have to do that if you're very threatened, right? But a secure leader is the last one to eat, right? He's there to allow everyone who's in his company or in his family to shine. That's what the king is trying to. He wants. He's a leader, whatever the word. It's to bring out the best in his wife, and to bring out the best in each of the children. That's what he's there for. It's not to shine the light on him. There's a selflessness to that versus anything else. Now, we'll get to existing as well, because healthy masculinity doesn't just mean, only, being there as a doormat to just be for other people. Part of the other end of that would be, there's the dominant side of it, but then there's also the not existing side, which is like the hypo-masculine version of that archetype of king. To be very meek, everyone knows, to be in a relationship with someone who either doesn't exist, doesn't have opinions, doesn't have a preference, is very difficult. It's
no energy. Sure.
There's no energy there. So in this role, it means just this healthy balance of also showing up, of having opinions, of having a say, of having preferences, but being flexible with it, right? And being and being compromising with it, or sometimes being easy with it, but that you exist, that you have opinions. So that's one of the.
So I'm just curious, for those of us who are scriptural and biblical based, could you give us a contrast of two kings? One who was the archetype masculine perfect king, and one who was antithetical to that?
Perfect. So I think our ideal king is David HaMelech, and how we understand him on our level. I think you have this element where there's, on one hand, there's the warrior of all warriors, fearless. Nothing's getting in his way, and then simultaneously you can, like you read Tehillim, there's nothing more
Humility.
selfless,
Mhm.
humility, emotional. So there's leadership, but in its healthiest form.
And
There's
then when, of
nothing
course, with Michal, when he danced in front of the Aron, where he
right.
was completely subjugated to a greater power.
A greater power, which is you're touching there a little bit on this on how the second or the next archetype, which is really is put into the either the king or the warrior. That's another archetype of the man, of the masculine, and you're touching on it. There's something that's greater than the individual that he is given over to. Now, it's even greater than her. Now, this sounds so antithetical. Why would a woman want that her husband is given over to something beyond him or her that's threatening? But it's not. A woman or the feminine in its healthy effect is happy as long as she agrees with that bigger ideal to 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 see that healthy masculine and stand by his side if it's selfless and it's sacrificial and it's genuine. So the warrior who's there because he needs to protect the people is not something that the feminine that his wife is going to necessarily, we'll talk about the particulars, but in its archetype is going to, it's the opposite. She's going to find that extremely noble and attractive. Wow, there's the warrior. There's something that he sees and is ready be bigger than himself to give himself over to, because that's very secure. It's not a self-centered person here. There's an ideal that's bigger. So the masculine is tapping into that, and the feminine is there to often to support that. Again, as long as it's an ideal that they're both aligned with. So if you want to say, one of the examples by us can be, you see, it's the thing that's annoying that may also be the thing that's deeply respected. Let's give an example because we're very theoretical so far, right? So as long as it's done in a healthy way, let's say you have a frum, caring, loving husband, and and he is there, and it's always with consideration. And it comes, oh, it's 9 o'clock, and that's when he usually leaves for learning for his chavrusa. And it's a crazy night and whatever. And he checks in with her and he says, by the way, I see you're overwhelmed. I'm happy if I can't go out tonight. Have my usual thing, but if it's too much tonight, I'm and so that's great, and he's caring. But if it's okay, I'd love to come out and to go out to my learning, and then when I come back, I'll finish up the things or I'll whatever. There's something bigger than her that he's and that he's not just doing it on her cheshbon, but this is something that he wakes up early to do also, and that he pushes himself when he's tired and hungry to also do. Right? It's real, it's genuine, it's authentic. Is that something that she respects? And if that's an ideal of her, almost always yes. It's something that, even though it's annoying, she would want that versus there's nothing that he has even more important than her. He's always there, and he's there right then to help. And so it's that's part of the healthy masculine, that there's something greater
I'm
than him.
thinking like I'm imagining, a spouse, a husband, let's say, who is always um uh giving in or giving up, sacrificing himself and things that are greater than
A
himself
woman
to be there for his wife, and the
doesn't
woman
respect it.
becoming annoyed and overwhelmed with that.
It so that's you hit it on the head, Moshe. That's not respected ultimately. Now, this can't be abused and misused because, like I was saying before, yeah. So I'm going to stick with my masculine higher ideal, and I'll let you. No, that's misusing this. But when it's done in its healthy form, again, him checking in, let's say, with her
Hmm.
again in the right way,
Hmm.
but him also having the backbone to sometimes not please her, that ultimately is going to be the thing that's more respected by her in most cases,
Right.
as long as it's in the bigger context of a healthy
And in
relationship.
therapy, like many women have said, I'd rather that he hurt my feelings sometimes
Yeah,
than that I not know what's going on inside of him. Right?
right.
Because if he hurts my feelings, we could talk about it. But I have somebody here. I have some energy. He's telling me his true feelings and beliefs. I mean, imagine if you came home and your wife made chicken once a week, and you never told her that you don't like it.
Right.
And then she finds out about that 30 years later. Would she be happy? Wow, my husband's a saint. He never told me. Or would she say, I can't believe it. He
Right.
could have just told me and, figured out how to say it. Maybe it wouldn't have felt so good, but we could have saved, he could have been, I would feel like I'm in an authentic relationship.
Exactly. It's because ultimately she is sensing that the reason why he is never doing anything other than pleasing her is really
Weak.
out of fear, out of fear of any confrontation. And ultimately, if he's always avoiding the confrontation, it's not respected. It's not respected. Whereas if he has ideals or if he has things that are important to him that he's super considerate about, and they're authentic and real, that he is able to then stand up for, right, when he feels it's right, then it's respected by her. um, I'm reminding myself now, there's a woman, Marilyn Murray, and she does a lot of exercises for trauma. One of the things
She was
she
she
has
was
this
just
exercise.
she was just on
Oh,
the
she was
show a
on a
couple of weeks
show. You're
ago.
right. I remember seeing her name. Oh, okay. So did she talk about the circles of intimacy exercise
Yes.
she has? Oh,
Yeah, but
okay,
no, not in
perfect.
detail. But
Okay. So, but in her circles of intimacy, I love her work. The Murray method. Her book is great. So, um, so in her circles of intimacy, she writes the importance of a relationship is going to be who are your priorities in life. Every yes to one person is a no to another person, and you have to have boundaries. And she'll often, in her examples, she'll write, my first priority, you'd think, in a relationship is, you can say it different ways, is first and foremost, not in a narcissistic way. You can say the word to self, or my own values, or for a Jew would be to God. The standards that I have are first and foremost that's my number one relationship, and number two for many people is then going to be my spouse, my wife. And the reason why it's relevant to what we're saying now is if my spouse will tell me something that is antithetical to my first relationship, which is to God, then my first allegiance is there. So if my wife is telling me something that is whatever it is, immoral, and I can have the spine to say, I love you dearly, but no. Now, often that's misused. It's a pervert. In many cases, there's a lot of flexibility. You have to know, and one has to either ask or understand well. God often wants us, again, you ask your Rebbe or your Rav, whatever, um, to accommodate. And there are a lot of times this flexibility because there's another human being, and there are a lot of exceptions. That's why we have to know that God is very pro shalom bias also. Again, not under all circumstances. But that way that she describes it, and then kids might come after, or depending on in that moment, a kid might need something before a spouse, and they're young and helpless, so you help them. But in terms of our religion, and parents might come or siblings, it's important to know that. But in the very beginning of it, healthy masculinity is going to have that. There's something that comes even before, again, with a lot of consideration. Now, so I want to mention, our society as a whole really, I would say, is at war against masculinity, um, um, healthy, unhealthy. I think that if you look back, even at the shows, if you were exposed to any form of media currently or growing up, especially, um, the man is so often depicted as one of two or three things. Either he is a tremendous lo yutzlach, some very, very incapable, unsuccessful human being, like dumb, irrelevant. You can look at The Simpsons was a show like that. You had Married with Children was a show. There were different shows like the dumb father, the dumb husband, right? Like that's what the man is. The other version was, the Marlboro Man, Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the overcompensating, emotionless warrior man. And then you have another version could be the nice guy, the feminine, meek, metro kind of guy. These were the versions of what, but like just healthy masculinity, which was what we're talking about now, is wasn't ever depicted. It was barely an option. And I think that being left with that, we're like, as men, we're just poor role models. Let's hopefully we have them in our families, or we become them to our own kids. But as a society, there's very little to hang our hats on. And say, this is something that is depicting it in a healthy type of way. And therefore, tonight's discussion of trying to uncover what are some of the elements of this in a healthy way is I think, extremely, extremely important. I think even in our own culture, we can enter marriage. I'll give one example. To not care so much to be mevater on things, which is a huge, huge, important midah, and we need to have it. But when that's brought into marriage, that I don't really care about things. What do you want? What do you want for supper, honey? Whatever is easy, whatever is good. Where do you want to go? When do you want? Whatever you want. So, like you were saying before, it ends up being very unfulfilling. It ends up being very unfulfilling. Whereas, can a person get in touch with?
It's empty when you can't discuss, and you can't the word that keeps coming to mind is energy. There's no energy if we can't discuss it. If I want to go to my parents and you want to go to your parents,
Right,
and we can't discuss that and try to figure something out, we have nothing. We don't have a relationship.
right, right. Correct, correct. And it's a cultural thing that many Bachrim who are going into marriage working on me this sort of erroneously um, take that into a marriage, and it's not doing anyone any favor. It's ultimately not what ends up being attractive in a relationship. There's a certain, again, presence and a certain authenticity with generosity and flexibility and all of the good stuff that's needed in healthy masculinity. There's to add, he calls it magician, but there's a masculine trait is a certain competency, a competence with something. What it is, let it. But a healthy male has a certain competence. Now, it doesn't have to be everyone's made to be a big Talmud Chacham and to have to be competent in learn. And not everyone's going to be, the most competent in technology. But so if whatever that area is, to have a certain competency, a certain hush in something, whether it's with people, whether it's with being putting things together, that's a male, usually a male need. And for that person to train in that, or to become as much of an expert in that, and to feel
So
good
when
about
you
that.
talk about competence, it sounds like becoming a shalem, becoming complete in a specific area. Is femininity different in that their trait is to be a jack of all trades and a master of none, versus the masculinity trait which is to be a master of something? Is that what you mean? Where women could sort of do everything but not perfectly? Is that
I don't think it ends up being exactly how you're saying it. The quality. I think there are women that can, outdo men in specific things. But I don't know if it's as much of a female quality to feel within themselves that that there's something that they're able to really feel like they're good at this thing. And I think there are other qualities of nurturing, of communicating, of almost of community, of connecting, that is more important of a quality to women than it is to men. But there's certain competence that many men will thrive on if they and whatever it is, if they feel like they have that. That's a like they're needed for this thing,
right?
and they're good at this thing. And
One of the things that comes up in Yemen, that I hear a lot, is people's confusion around, if I pursue something because I'm good at it, because I want it, because I want to master it, or I want to become, so to say, a leader in it, because I believe I'm so talented in it, am I narcissistic? Shouldn't I be complacent with the idea that I don't have to be the best at something. And I think there's a lot of confusion because there's something called healthy narcissism, which drives a person to pursue what he's really masterful at. So, how do we, where would you,
Yeah,
how do you,
yeah. So you're talking about ambition and you're talking about excellence, and are there healthy versions to all of this? A certain competitiveness, and these are more male qualities. Women can have them, but stereotypically, and the healthy versions of this so often are much less about other people and much more about within a person, themselves, which is a person feels
meaning competing with
like
themselves? Can
yeah,
I,
like I had the best day I could have, or I gave this thing, my best. So other people aren't seen as a threat to them, and then, but there's a certain competitiveness that people have really within themselves to know that they're growing, or that they're conquering, or that they're evolving, that they're becoming better at something. Um, and that they're competent. They feel like they can do something. And it's not the best out there, but it's something that I have a certain competency in, and it feels good when I'm doing this thing. So this person can have it for tennis, and this person can have it lahavdil, when he learns, and and a person can have it in a small area of the learning. Like, oh, this is a sugya, this is a masechta, this is a thing that I I put a lot into, and I feel like I'm somewhat competent in it, but with humility, and with humility means,
so
of
you
course,
you
it's
mean the pursuit of competence, really for the self,
yeah,
not as a badge or a plaque, but for the self. The
yes,
pursuit of competence is a masculine trait.
yes, yes, yeah. That also crosses over to the feminine, and I want to say, when the masculine is in these roles, the reason why it's a favor, the reason why it's a tova, it's a good thing, is because it allows the feminine or the spouse or the wife to be themselves, to now not need to fill a vacuum. If so often, I'll give an example. If you have a couple, and he starts to complain, she's so tough on the kids, and she's always screaming at them, and always disciplining them in such a harsh way, and why can't she calm down? On the surface, what does that sound like? She needs to do some work on herself, right? To get control. And he's a big tzaddik who's always under control, and that might be the case. But I want you to think for a second if sometimes there's a different dynamic going on here, which is he is not bringing just a masculine presence, a certain firmness to this home, right? So then things are going on. He doesn't say anything ever to anyone. There's no firmness in this house. So then there's a vacuum. She's losing her mind because no one's really listening. So then what does she have to do? She has to come in and leave her nurturing type of role and fill this role with then in a way that's not natural, and she's not comfortable with it. And then she has to assert this certain strength of screaming that she gets some level of control here. And then makes it worse is because then he's critical because there you go, you don't only scream at me, you scream at kids. This dynamic is because he isn't showing up. And if he wants to experiment on this, he doesn't have to become the screamer. But can he enter as a father and as a husband who's there, who's noticing, who's pointing things out that need to change or to stop, or if someone's teasing someone, or if someone's not doing what their mother asked, is he coming in with a certain firmness? It doesn't have to be with screaming. And then will he notice? Oh, whoa! Is she screaming less? Right? Is she dominating less? Is she controlling less? Why? Because he's coming into that, and and it's sometimes overlooked. It's sometimes overlooked. Um, you know, and this entire dynamic will lead if it's done in its unhealthy way, it will lead to also a more critical wife. Because when masculinity is in its healthy form, there's a natural respect for it. It's not a respect that he's demanding from her, because a healthy masculine is not needy, is not an emotionally needy person. When he comes home, his thought when he walks into the door is, I want to bring light, I want to bring a presence into this home, to show my wife how I love and was looking forward and appreciating coming home into this house. The weak masculine is going to want to, have the attention of his wife. And honey, I was waiting so long for you to come home. And he'll be disappointed and resentful and passive aggressive when he doesn't get that, because she was stressed out taking care of kids for the last 2, 3, 4 hours, or had her own stressful day working or whatever. So there's so many dynamics here that get straightened out when he comes in the healthy masculine.
Beautiful. Does anybody have any comments or questions? I'm curious. If you do, please use the React tab on the bottom of your screen. Click it and click the raise hand button. Anybody have any questions or comments? Okay.
Yeah. So, our relationships mutual? The answer is, of course, they are. But the case that's being made tonight is that there's a view and a way of experiencing relationships where, in this mutuality, there aren't equal roles. The roles aren't identical. The roles are different. And I'll say, let's use an example. We'll go to intimacy. So if you work with couples, a very, very common point that men will often make is, we're in this relationship, and it's very, very frustrating. Why? Because if I think back to how our intimate life is, I'm the one who will always be initiating, and it's getting very tiresome. I also want to feel like I'm attractive and that I'm wanted. And what ends up happening in this relationship, it's very lopsided, and I'm resentful of it. And why? That'll be a common thing that may be mentioned if you work with couples. And when we bring it into the masculine and feminine, there are big differences, just physically, biologically, erotically, relationally, and when they're understood properly, this type of complaint is very often calmed down. What do I mean? If the masculine role is going to be to initiate, and a man sees himself in that role, and that the feminine often wants to be attractive, wants to be beautiful, wants to get the attention. It's nothing personal. Your role is to come to the relationship in that type of way. Physiologically, it happens to be true that there's often an inner, spontaneous, innate desire that men have. And very often, if you read the early sex therapy literature, Besson and others, right, a woman is going to have generally a more reactive arousal template, where if she sees that there's attraction towards her in the context of a deep emotional relationship and healthy masculinity, in response to that, she then will come to it. It's nothing personal. It's seeing that not just the physiological and erotic differences, but the energetic differences are there. That there's the healthy initiator here in the masculine. Does that mean that women shouldn't ever initiate, can't ever initiate? Of course not. Can a man want that from time to time? Yeah, perhaps. But that the role is one that essentially and more often than not is different. Now, this may not land well for certain people, and then don't use it. But this is for couples who choose to resonate with this. Those men and women who this speaks to, it's something that's very, very useful. Are there couples out there that this would be very insulting to, or very off putting to?
Or
If it is,
antithetical to their personal personalities.
person,
You may have
no,
roles.
yeah, no one's shoving this down anyone's throat and saying
You're
that this
saying
is ideal.
conceptually,
But
archetype.
but this resonates for many people. For
Mhm.
certain couples, they finally say, "Wow,
Yeah, it
this,
explains something, right? It explains.
yeah." And when they start to identify with these roles, they find that their relationships end up flourishing because they were tapping into like something that wasn't natural to them. There was a certain neediness rather than a certain inner strength that was playing itself out in a relationship.
Okay, I want to take Shulman, would you ask your question or do you want me to ask it? There was a question out there on the chat
Hmm?
about, and I think it's a very important question. Go ahead, Shulman.
How would you, can you give an example of an intervention you would use to help a man or
Hmm?
a family, adjust to more of a
Yeah,
masculine role for the man, a healthy masculine role?
yeah, yeah, sure. So if we want to get very, very simple, if you take a typical um, I'll say stereotypical from man in 2025. Let's make a composite, right? The guy wakes up in the morning, a serious, nice, solid guy, and he tries to learn in the morning, goes to shul, runs off to work, gets home and helps out a little bit before the kids go to sleep, eats supper, or whatever. Either goes out again or is at home. So often, this individual's life is reduced to, let's say, two or three areas of life. Um, Maybe there's a Yiddishkeit, a learning element to it. There's a work element to it, and then his family, his wife and children. And this guy thinks and relies upon his entire emotional needs to be met by this one person, this woman. All of his insecurities, his inadequacies, his anxieties, whatever it is. Right, so with the guys, he'll joke around a little bit. He'll learn with his chavrusa, but his main emotional connection is one and only one place: his wife. Now that sounds almost like, yeah, what's the problem with that? I'll tell you the problem with that is that if that's going to be the case, more often than not, there's an unreasonable, unrealistic expectation that she
Burden.
needs to fill my emotional needs to that level that will lead more often than not to resentment, that it's not happening enough. He'll complain to her, she's not this enough, she's not that enough. So you want to talk, so what's one intervention? I'm telling a very simple thing. Now, men need to have relationships in addition to their loving, close, intimate, connected relationships with their wives to other men. After they get married, there still needs to be close connections to other men. Now you're saying, yeah, sure. No, it's not yeah. It's I don't want to say it's very uncommon. It is fairly common for men not to have those relationships anymore. They fall by the wayside. There's a limitation in time. There has to be a priority for that to happen. Now, why does that make a difference? I'll tell you why that makes a difference. Because when you have a man who has still healthy connections with other men, so even if it's the chavrusa that he has, but there's there doesn't have to be the time that they're supposed to learn, but a person can speak with other men in a way that similar, things that
You mean
whatever
that
you're struggling with,
he could be vulnerable.
vulnerable, have an emotional, connection to other men. Then a person comes home and he's not as emotionally needy only on this person to validate and to show up for them. He can show up and give more. And it means not just all one-on-one relationships. To be a man amongst men also means you can sit sometimes with guys and again, not at the expense of your family and your man. There are times that whether it's playing ball with other men or whether it's learning with other men, some people or sitting at a whatever it is, singing, farbrengen, whichever section of Yiddishkeit, whatever your hobbies are. That time is essential. Just like there's a whole other discussion, it's essential for women. They do this much more naturally. Women will connect to other women. Imagine if a woman had no other connections with her mother, her sisters, her neighbors, her friends, and it was all relying upon that the husband has to fill all of those. It wouldn't be fair to her. and it wouldn't be fair to him. It's not fair.
It'd be way too
So
overwhelming. And again, like all these
yeah,
examples that you're giving, I'm thinking of, different. I'm thinking of a couple who I counseled who the wife was begging her husband to go out on Thursday night and hang out with friends, go
right.
play ball or go out for cholent or
That's
whatever.
it.
Just
That
have
yeah,
friends, have a social
right.
life. And
Yes,
this
yes,
is another woman who she's very unsocial, and her husband is the sole,
yes,
he's the sole dependent on her emotional well-being, and it's just too much. It's too overwhelming for him. And people see it as like you said earlier, it's like what could be better than having a BFF who you're completely enmeshed with, right? But the
yes.
truth is that, and it's interesting because I remember when I was a teenager, I was having a conversation with my mashgiach, the Mir Yeshiva, Rabbi Erlanger, who's a wise man, and he mentioned this. He said, or maybe it was Rabbi Burdney, I can't remember now. But when I was in Yeshiva, Mir Yeshiva, he said, when you're married, there's your life, your wife's life, and then your life together. It's not
Yeah,
all one big thing.
right. And it makes it better for both when it's like that. It makes it better. Now, can this be misused? Can a guy be out till 3 a.m.? Of course, everything can be
Everything has
done
to be
in a
balanced.
healthy way.
Obviously, everything has
Everything
to
has
be
to be
balanced.
balanced, of course, of course. But when it is balanced, then you're dealing with a healthier man who's coming. Imagine you have a man who's schmoozed a little bit with his friend. So when he comes home, is he more ready to be a giving person and not just he's not depleted as a person as much, okay, or he has other outlets. So women want that in their men when it's done in a healthy way. They respect that. They're attracted ultimately to that as well. They're versus an overly sensitive, needy person who's not in their own self-worth and having healthy male emotional connections. Another thing, it's not just to overwhelm. There's a need for men to connect with other men and to be understood and to experience together masculinity in a way that is a different connection in a romantic or intimate or emotional relationship. Both are needed. They tap into
Right. So
different
we
things.
need our romantically intimate relationship, and we also need our, I guess, like from a social place. It's like connecting with like-minded, your other gender person or significant other, right?
Right.
There's one kind of dynamic, and then your same gender significant others, there's other benefits and dynamics that you're gaining from, sort of like
100%.
like learning, the
Yes.
daughter's learning from Mama Bear and the boy's learning
Yeah.
from.
Yes. We're part of. We have multiple. Like we're part of a tribe. We're the warriors. We go out as men in a pack, right? And we do what we do. Whether it's the team that you're working with, it can be, of course, it could be women at the work that we're doing also these days. But there's something of the guys, whether it's we have it built in if you're active, in shuls and or in different ways to be part of a chevra, and then there's our family lives and our intimate lives, and they both nurture one another. So to answer your question, Shalom, one intervention, I think we're giving multiple examples of this, is for men to connect and be active in individually, one on one, and in groups, both. And if it's Yiddishkeit wise, hobbies wise, different ways to prioritize it, not just for their selfish way, but seeing it that it's going to be something that they're going to be doing a big favor for their wives and families if it's done in a healthy and considerate way.
Is group therapy a nice, a nice idea for this?
Yeah. So there are I myself have partook in them over the years. There are different formats that men are working on male issues, on masculinity, and done in a group form is extremely powerful. That's exactly this. And there's work being done specifically in this area, to be able to talk out the shame that men will feel and the challenges that they have, specifically the insecurities, the inadequacies, the challenges in relationships, and hear that it's universal amongst men, and then to be able to talk with each other, and then understand ourselves so much better because of that. Yeah.
Okay. If anybody has any questions or comments, please hit the React tab on the bottom of your screen and click on raise your hand. If you if you're not subscribed to Mondays with Maishi just yet, then please send me an email at mnorman@lcsw@gmail.com and I will subscribe you. Binyamin, I heard you talk about this topic at the Nefesh conference a couple of years ago, probably in, gonna guess, 2023, was it? 2022, 2023?
I think, yeah, we're talking 2-3 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And I recall a lot of Kabbalistic concepts that you brought connecting this from Kabbalah. That's one area I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on how we can apply this or find this in some of the Kabbalistic writings, that this isn't only Jung. And then, lastly, or additionally, I'd be curious to know how this talk can benefit therapists working with wives.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So I have to give a disclaimer. I'm unfortunately not an expert by any means in anything. Although we were talking about competence before, I'm still trying, but and definitely not in anything.
You're becoming competent in humility.
Yeah, okay, and especially not anything in Kabbalah as well. But from the little that I've come across, there's the whole framework of Pnimius HaTorah, of Hasidus, which is really an outgrowth of Kabbalah, is masculine and feminine, like are the ABCs, of everything. All the whole map of the spheres, of the Zion spheres. There's the masculine and feminine side. We were alluding to it before. We said Chachma and Bina, but really Chesed and Gevura, and then follows down. Netzach is more the masculine. Hod is more the feminine, and then you have the top bottom, where you're going to have Yesod into Malchus is also masculine to feminine. So it's right to left, it's up to down. There's different directions that masculine and feminine are portrayed in Kabbalah, and these are tapping into, I think, some of the things that we were talking about here. You see, let's leave, for example, for a minute, and then we'll come back to it. Even if we were using intimacy, and I want to take another example of it, not just the initiator. There's a certain energy that you can pick up on when you're reading different literature in terms of interventions when it comes to desire and intimacy and fulfillment. One of the things is there needs to be, you use the word energy, there's a consonance and a dissonance that both need to be present when we're talking about the energy of intimacy, the attractiveness. It's not just about secure attachment and about coziness and about familiarity and about safety. That's like one of the dimensions of intimacy. Intimacy also has a certain healthy power play where there's the masculine, when it shows up in its healthy form, is what's attractive and what creates a dynamic between the masculine and feminine. So it's not just, it's in the context of super consideration, care, closeness. I don't know, I have to give this disclaimer because I don't want people to misunderstand anything that I ever say, but that's the last time I want to say that disclaimer. But there also has to be a certain primal, raw masculinity that shows up within intimacy that ends up adding a tremendous amount of desire and of pleasure both ways. And that showing up is tapping into some of these midas that we're talking about, which is, is there an aspect that this is touching on of netzach, of a certain conquering and victory, again, with mutuality and consideration. And then the other feminine side of beauty can feel beautiful, can feel attracted, can feel in its feminine. And then, of course, they can each borrow from each other. There's the anima, animus, there's the male and the female and the male. There's aspects of that. But masculinity showing up all over. So not just in the home, but also in its healthy form in the bedroom. Again, there can be both roles. There's flexibility, but that's a necessary component there that that can and needs to show up. For a person to appreciate, we were talking about chesed and gevura. There's so much that we can talk endlessly about these things, but is there a certain containment that a woman brings in terms of strength and gevura, that she creates a home? A home has boundaries. A home has limitations, right? A home, lets certain people in, doesn't. It's more it's discerning, right? I'm not comfortable with that. I am comfortable with that. The masculine needs to depend, is attracted to the feminine. It may, in its unhealthy form, resent it. Why are you limiting me? Why are you controlling? But in its healthy form, the masculine craves the feminine, craves the limitation that's set, craves the home. It's conquering all day. It wants to come home, right? It's it's attracted to the details of how a table is set, right? Again, men can be into that also, but it's attracted to the details of that beauty. If it appreciates that, it needs that, because it's attracted to the presence that a woman in its, let's say you want to say so to Malchus. Malchus is the ground. It's present in the moment for what's going on. So the man might always have a detachment, which is necessary for to be able to keep a bigger picture. But sometimes it's refreshing to just meet the moment, and the feminine can come with the rawness of that moment emotionally also, and the man craves that, and so it's like this deeper appreciation of these different energies that instead of being judgmental and resentful, it allows each one to thrive when they're done in their healthy form. So these are some of the aspects I think
it sounds like if the man would be allowed or permitted to extend his wings, it would be too vast and endless. And he needs he also, I should say, also needs the boundaries within his expansion
right.
of the feminine, and he's attracted to that because he knows that if he'll go too far, there's no turning back, there's no completion, is that what you're saying?
100%, yeah. And that's the feminine quality that limits him, but that ultimately allows him to excel because of he's limited in that way. So that's why the masculine thrives in a great marriage versus being disconnected to the feminine, and the feminine thrives when it's connected to the healthy masculine. And the ultimate litmus test is, it's not like a mystery here. Is the masculine healthy or not? Ultimately, it's very simple. It's
Are they happy?
what are the intimate relationships like? Are they happy? The healthy masculine will always have a flourishing relationship with a woman who's thriving in her femininity, and also deeply respectful, attractive and safe and secure. And he wants her to be feminine. He wants her to be a woman. He wants her to have her friends. You see, the insecure masculine is threatened by her friends, threatened by her mother or her sisters, whatever it is. The healthy masculine nurtures that and wants that.
Wow. Any comments or questions on this? Because we're sort of toning down to the end. So Binyamin, help me with this last question about the therapist of the wife. What's valuable for her to know about this?
The therapist of a wife. So there's a few things that come to mind. You see, number one, it's not tonight's discussion, and maybe it's for other people to discuss more than myself, is that there's also the healthy and the wounded feminine, and the toxic feminine. And when we're working with women, one of the things we want to do in the healthy feminine is to promote the healthy masculine. like we're doing tonight. Meaning, if I'm working with a woman and she's overly controlling, or she's threatened because her husband is just trying to be a healthy man, and she resents that, she finds that threatening. And that could be because her own stuff. It could be he's doing it in an unhealthy way, of
Right.
course, but it can also be just like this unhealthy man is not letting her be a woman. She can also sometimes not let him do his thing. Like you were giving that example before of that woman who ended up needing everything about of her intimate emotional life to be just based on and only on him. And there are many examples. You can work with couples where you can see that she's clipping those wings and not letting that happen, because anything masculine could be for good reason, but anything masculine is ultimately threatening to her, and that can come from her own stuff. So that would
Okay,
be
but
number
that's
one.
not, so in a sense, I hear what you're saying, but that's really working with the woman, not
Yeah,
working with the wife. I guess my question is, uh,
working with
my
the wife.
husband is
Yeah,
not, no, they're working with the wife of the
yeah,
husband.
got
Husband
it.
seems to not be,
Ah,
something's wrong. What can I, as the wife, or what should I, as the wife,
yeah.
be promoting or be, wisely uh, um, developing?
I got your question. I didn't, right. I
Mhm,
didn't understand your question.
mhm.
Now I get it a little bit better. Um, See, you can't do the work for someone else. You can create the space for it.
Mhm.
This work is first and foremost his. Can she allow that, promote that,
Mhm.
encourage that,
Mhm.
and really communicate that that's ultimately what she thinks would benefit him most.
Mhm.
But if he's not getting in touch with this in a healthy way, you know what he'll end up saying? Ah, I have a wife who basically is cold and who's pushing me away, that she doesn't want to validate and give me all my emotional needs. So she's just saying, I
Go to your
should, yeah,
friends.
talk to my friends, and it's just a further rejection. Um, and it could be that sometimes. I'm not saying it's not
Right.
that,
But
but
you're
but
talking about, let's say, for
and,
this therapist to be
right,
able to educate the woman
right,
on how
right,
her husband will be most balanced and healthy and happy, and
yes,
how to teach him how to, both to permit and teach and encourage him how to go pursue those interests, whether it's, like you said, development of competence, social man-to-man interaction,
yeah,
and I guess reassure him lastly that she'll be okay. Like, you don't have
yep,
to hover over me in order
mm-hmm,
for me to be okay. I can be okay without that.
yep, yep, yep. And a part of this that we didn't talk about tonight much, part of the healthy masculine that we want this wife to promote, and we want men to grow into and to step into. It's also it's healthy fathering. We don't talk about what it's like to be we're talking about being a husband in a relationship, and also being a father, um, to sons, a father to daughters. There's healthy masculinity. So first and foremost, can we express first of all, emotions, and talk to our boys? Number one, can we show physical affection to boys? It's so important. A boy can turn 14, 15, 16, suddenly there's no, can we walk into the door, can we you know wrap our arms around them? Physical intimacy is still important, man to man, with our boys, with our sons. You know, what if we play a little bit? Can we still have a catch with them? Can we still play a little bit of ball with them? Can can we do also male thing? We can learn. So there's often the father son, but can we do male things,
Can
whatever
we
they are,
dig?
and
Can we dig with them in the mud?
can we do? So now when they're older, there's a different version of that, that we can sometimes do over a ben azmanim in a healthy way. It doesn't have to always only be family time, like we were saying. There can be things that we do with our boys. And again, From Life has a lot of this built into it, but there are things that mothers can do and should do with their daughters as well, in addition to the family
Mhm.
things.
Okay, well, we're really running out of time. I just want to know if there's anybody who has any final questions, thoughts, or comments to share with us before we call it a night. Any last thoughts or ideas? Binyamin, anything you want to share? I mean, I thought this was so so insightful because you're creating a prototype, so to say. Obviously, there's always exceptions, but it's still a prototype of what it means to be a different gender. That we are different. A couple of years ago, I had someone on the show. His name is Avram Weiss. He lives in Maine, and he really was very strong to the belief that there's not necessarily a difference between boys and girls, and the whole difference is that we're taught to be different. And I, challenged him on that a lot because, I have many children and many nieces and nephews, and I've watched kids, and it's like they're different. They're
From the
different
womb. From the womb.
from the womb. And my wife claims that from the punches and the kicks in the womb, she can tell already if it's a boy or a girl. Okay, maybe she doesn't. But there's just something that's inherently and intuitively different, and you're sort of doing a beautiful job painting, what that is and what we should be striving for, with exception, in understanding that everybody is somewhat different. But again, characteristically and stereotypically, what is it that if we build and develop and work on, will make better people, I should say, more full, rich people and rich relations.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And I think if we don't step into this organic role, for most people, there's just an unnatural, unfulfilled, sometimes depressed, sometimes just low feeling experience in themselves and in relationships. And when we step into this and try to thrive in who we're supposed to be, then we thrive.
And I guess on a deeper level, this ought to be what many of us focus on in our own therapy. It should be, how can I find myself? Where's the self? Obviously, we've all been hurt in some way, somehow, at some point, and what's been uh, affected and deficient, what's become deficient in the perfection of our role, and this is what we should be looking to heal and to develop.
Yeah. And I want to
Okay.
thank you. I want to thank you, Moshe, for bringing this topic out, because it's it's not so politically correct for I think for the wrong reasons, and no one's shoving